Essie Mensah watched her husband laugh at her across a Seoul courtroom, and she didn't flinch. His lawyer had just told the judge she had nothing, owned nothing, contributed nothing to their 4-year marriage. The number 3 million won hung in the air like an insult dressed as generosity. Junwoo's mother sat beside him with that satisfied look people wear when they think they've finally removed a stubborn stain. They had no idea that in exactly 4 minutes when Essie's lawyer opened the folder sitting calmly on the table, that laugh would die in Junwoo's throat and his entire world would crack down the middle. The first time Essie Mensah heard her husband laugh at her in public, she was standing in a Seoul family courtroom wearing a navy dress she'd bought 3 years ago. The dress had a small stain near the hem that she'd tried to remove the night before. It didn't come out. She wore it anyway because Junwoo had stopped giving her access to the credit card 6 months ago, and she had exactly 230,000 won left in the account he knew about. He sat 3 meters away with his mother, Madam Cho, and 2 lawyers in dark suits. The lawyers had spread papers across their table, like they were playing a game they'd already won. Junwoo's hair was styled the way he always wore it for important meetings, and his mother sat with her hands folded, back straight, looking at Essie the way you'd look at a stain you were about to scrub out. The judge was reading through documents. The courtroom smelled like old wood and the cleaning solution they used on the floors. Essie focused on that smell instead of the tightness in her chest. One of Junwoo's lawyers stood up. He was young, maybe 30, and he spoke Korean so fast that Essie had to concentrate to catch every word. "Your Honor, the facts are simple, Mrs. Park came to Korea with nothing. She has no property, no income, no assets of her own. During the marriage, she was supported entirely by my client and his family. She made no financial contribution to the household. We ask for a simple, clean dissolution with no settlement beyond what my client has generously offered. 3 million won for relocation expenses. 3 million won. That was about 2,000 euros. Essie had spent 4 years getting her master's degree in industrial chemistry. She'd moved to Seoul alone, learned Korean in 8 months, and developed a textile dye formula that was currently generating revenue in 14 countries. 3 million won. Junwoo leaned back in his chair, the corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but close enough. His mother's face didn't change, but her eyes did. There was satisfaction there, quiet and cold. Then Junwoo laughed. It wasn't loud. Just a quick exhale, a soft sound that probably only Essie and the people at his table heard. But she heard it. She watched his shoulders shake once, watched him glance at his mother, watched the lawyer try not to smile. They thought this was funny. The judge looked up. "Does the respondent wish to present anything?" The room went quiet. Essie's lawyer, Attorney Baek, was a woman in her 50s with gray streaks in her hair and reading glasses on a chain. She stood up slowly, pulled 3 folders from her briefcase, and walked them to the judge's bench. "Your Honor, my client would like to submit documentation for the court's review." The judge took the folders, opened the first one. His eyebrows went up. Attorney Baek turned to face Junwoo's table. "My client, Doctor. Essie Kuavi Mensah holds international patents for bio-based textile dye technology filed independently in the European Union, the United States, and 17 OAPI member nations. These patents were filed prior to and separate from any technology claimed by Park Fiber Company." Junwoo stopped smiling. "We have documentation," Attorney Baek continued, "showing that Park Fiber Company used Dr. Mensah's proprietary formulas without proper attribution or compensation, constituting intellectual property theft under international law. We also have contracts showing licensing agreements, Dr. Mensah has independently negotiated with clients in France, Germany, and Switzerland." The judge was flipping through papers now, reading fast. Madam Cho leaned forward and whispered something sharp to one of the lawyers. He looked confused. Attorney Baek opened the second folder in front of the judge. "This is an independent audit of my client's current assets, including patent valuations, licensing revenue, and consultancy fees earned over the past 18 months. Essie watched Junwoo's face. Watched the exact moment he started to understand. "Dr. Mensah's current net worth," Attorney Baek said clearly, "is 4,700,000,000 won. We are filing a counterclaim for intellectual property theft, breach of contract, and damages in the amount of 12 billion won." The silence in the courtroom was so complete that Essie could hear someone's phone vibrate in their pocket 3 rows back. Junwoo stared at her, actually stared, mouth half open like he was looking at a stranger. He was. The woman he'd married, the one who'd asked him nervously how to bow to his mother, the one who'd tried so hard to make his family like her, that woman was gone. She'd disappeared the night he told Essie that without his family's money, her formula would still be worthless notes in a book nobody would ever read. Essie looked right back at him, didn't smile, didn't blink. Then she spoke, in perfect Korean, the first words she'd said out loud in the courtroom. "I built something. You put your name on it. Now I'm taking it back. If you're already hooked and want to see how Essie went from that courtroom to total victory, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because this story is about to get even better. The judge set a date for the next hearing, 6 weeks out. Junwoo's lawyers were flipping through papers, talking over each other in low, urgent voices. Madam Cho sat frozen, her hands still folded, but her knuckles had gone white. Essie stood up, smoothed down her navy dress with the stain on it, and walked out. Attorney Baek followed her into the hallway. Don't talk to any of them if they follow you. I won't. Don't answer calls from numbers you don't recognize. I won't. And Essie, Attorney Baek stopped walking and turned to face her. You did well in there. You stayed calm. Essie nodded. Calm was easy when you'd spent 18 months planning for this exact moment. She took the subway home, transferred twice, and walked 4 blocks to her apartment in Hanamdong. It was small, a 1-bedroom she'd rented under her maiden name 3 months ago. Junwoo didn't know about it. His family didn't know about it. She unlocked the door, set her bag down, and stood in the middle of the room. Then she let herself breathe. Her phone buzzed. Once. Twice. 7 times in a row. All from Junwoo. She turned the phone off and sat down on the floor with her back against the wall. 3 years ago, she'd arrived in Seoul with 1 suitcase and a folder full of research notes. She'd been so sure of herself then, so convinced that good work would speak for itself. She'd been wrong about that, but she'd learned the apartment was quiet. Outside, she could hear traffic, someone's television through the wall, normal evening sounds. She closed her eyes and let herself remember the beginning, before everything broke. Essie had made 17 phone calls before Park Fiber Company agreed to meet with her. 17 companies, 17 polite rejections. Too busy, not interested. We'll keep your information on file. She'd been living in a Goshiwon in Dongdaemun, a room so small she could touch both walls if she stretched her arms out, shared bathroom down the hall, no kitchen. She ate convenience store kimbap and studied Korean grammar at night. Her formula was good. She knew it was good. Plant-based dye that could survive industrial washing, didn't fade, used 70% less water than conventional methods. She'd spent 3 years developing it for her master's thesis in Lyon, and another year refining it. Korean textile companies were innovative, fast-moving, and she'd thought they'd see the potential immediately. She'd thought wrong. Park Fiber Company was the 18th call. The woman who answered the phone sounded tired. Send your information to our general email. Someone will review it. I've sent emails, Essie said. I'm asking for 20 minutes. I can come to your office. We don't do in-person presentations for unsolicited proposals. Then what do I need to do to get 20 minutes? There was a pause. Then, hold on. 2 minutes of hold music. A man's voice came on the line. This is Park Junwoo. You're the one with the plant-based dye? Yes. You have samples? Yes. Come tomorrow, 2 p.m. Bring everything. He hung up. Essie stared at her phone, then scrambled to print new copies of her documentation at the PC room downstairs. The Park Fiber Company office was in a mid-sized building in Seongsu-dong industrial area. Lots of warehouses and small manufacturing. The lobby was plain, just a desk and some chairs. Essie arrived 15 minutes early in the only professional clothes she owned, carrying a bag with fabric samples and her research binder. The receptionist made a call, then pointed to the elevator. 4th floor. Someone will meet you. Junwoo was waiting when the elevator doors opened. He was tall, or taller than she'd expected, with tired eyes and a coffee stain on his sleeve he didn't seem to notice. He looked at her for a second, then at the bag she was carrying. Doctor. Menses? Yes. Thank you for meeting with me. Let's see what you have. He led her to a small conference room with a table covered in fabric samples and color charts. There was a window overlooking the street, and the afternoon light coming through it was gray and flat. Show me, he said. Essie opened her bag, pulled out 3 fabric samples, and laid them on the table. These were dyed using my formula 6 months ago. They've been washed 40 times in industrial conditions, exposed to direct sunlight for 300 hours, and tested for color fastness. Junwoo picked up the first sample, a deep indigo cotton. He held it up to the light, rubbed it between his fingers. What's the mordant? There isn't one. The formula bonds directly to cellulose fibers. He looked at her. That's not possible. It's possible. The bonding agent is derived from plant tannins. I can show you the process. She opened her research binder, walked him through the chemical breakdown, the extraction process, the application method. He listened without interrupting, reading over her notes, checking the samples again. 20 minutes turned into an hour. Finally, he set the last sample down and leaned back in his chair. This is real. Yes. Why Korea? You could take this to companies in Europe. I wanted to work somewhere that moves fast. Korean textile industry innovates faster than anywhere else. He almost smiled. You researched us, of course, and you called 18 companies before someone said yes, 17 before you. This time he did smile, just a little. Wait here. He left the room. Essie sat alone, heart pounding, trying not to hope too hard. 15 minutes later, Junwoo came back with an older man in a shirt with rolled-up sleeves. "This is my father, Park Dae-jung. He runs the company." Park Dae-jung had the same tired eyes as his son, but his were sharper. He looked at the samples, looked at Essie's notes, then looked at her. "You developed this yourself?" "Yes, sir. In France. For my master's thesis, yes. I've been refining it since." "Can you scale it for industrial production?" "Yes, I've mapped out the process. It would need testing, but the chemistry is sound." He nodded slowly. "We'll need to discuss terms. Junwoo will handle negotiations. If this works the way you say it does, we're interested." Essie felt her breath catch. "Thank you." Park Dae-jung left. Junwoo stayed. "You'll need a contract," he said. "And we'll need to run our own tests. How long are you in Seoul?" "As long as it takes." He looked at her again, that same assessing look, but softer this time. "You came here alone?" "No family in Korea?" "No, that's brave. It's necessary." He nodded. "I'll call you in 2 days. We'll set up lab time." Essie stood, packed her samples, and headed for the door. She was almost out when Junwoo spoke again. 17 calls before us. Most people would have stopped at 5. She turned back. "Then most people don't want it enough." That time his smile reached his eyes. 2 days later he called. Then he called again. Then they were spending 12-hour days in the lab, testing batches, adjusting formulas, running the dye through every stress test Park Fiber Company had. The formula worked. Better than worked. It was exactly what the company needed, a sustainable product they could market internationally, something that set them apart. Junwoo started meeting Essie for coffee after lab sessions, then dinner, then walks along the river when they were both too tired to think about chemistry anymore. "My older brother runs the main company," he told her one night. They were sitting on a bench near Seongsu Bridge, watching the lights reflect off the water. "My father gave me the fiber division because it was failing. I either fix it or it closes. That's a lot of pressure. It's a test. My father doesn't think I can do it." "Can you?" He looked at her. "With your formula, yes. It's not just my formula. You know production. You know the market. That matters." "We make a good team," he said, and for a while Essie believed him. 6 months after that first meeting, Junwoo took her to a restaurant in Gangnam, the kind with private rooms and food she couldn't pronounce. He was nervous, kept adjusting his napkin. "I need to ask you something," he said. Essie set down her chopsticks. "My family, they're traditional. My mother especially. If we're going to keep working together, if this is going to be serious, they need to meet you." "Serious," Essie repeated. "I want it to be, do you?" Her heart was beating too fast. She'd known this was coming, felt it building for weeks, but hearing it out loud still felt unreal. "Yes," she said. He smiled, relieved. Okay, good. Then meet my family. Let them see what I see." The first dinner with the Park family was in their home in Pyeongchang-dong, a house that was too big and too quiet. Madame Cho had greeted Essie at the door with a smile that didn't move past her mouth. "You're the chemist," she'd said. "Yes, ma'am. Junwoo speaks highly of your work. Not of you. Of your work." Essie had smiled and followed her inside. Dinner was formal. Junwoo's father asked questions about her research. His older brother, Junho, barely looked at her. Madame Cho watched everything Essie did, every movement with her chopsticks, every word she spoke. Afterward, in the car, Junwoo had squeezed her hand. That went well. It hadn't. But Essie didn't say that. 3 months later, Junwoo proposed. Private, just the two of them, in the same lab where they'd first tested her formula. "I know this is fast," he'd said, holding a ring that looked expensive and felt heavy. "But I don't want to wait, marry me." Essie had looked at him, at his hopeful face, at the life he was offering. Stability, partnership, a chance to see her work become something real. "Yes," she'd said. The wedding was small. Madame Cho had insisted on traditional elements, a hanbok for Essie that felt like a costume, bows to elders whose names she barely knew. Her own mother, Adjoa, had flown in from Lomé and sat in the front row looking quietly unimpressed by the whole ceremony. "You're sure about this?" Adjoa had asked the night before. "I love him, Mama. Love is one thing, family is another. His mother doesn't like you. She doesn't know me yet." Adjoa had just nodded, the way she did when she disagreed but knew arguing wouldn't help. After the wedding, things changed slowly. So slowly that Essie didn't notice at first. The patent paperwork for her formula started moving through Park Fiber Company's legal department. Junwoo brought home documents for her to sign, dense legal Korean that he said was standard. "It's just for corporate structure," he'd explained. "The company needs to hold the patent to license it properly. My name will still be on it?" "Of course." She'd signed. 3 months later, she'd seen the filed patent. Park Fiber Company was listed as the sole inventor. Her name appeared once in the acknowledgments, the same place they thanked the janitorial staff. "Junwoo, this isn't what we discussed." He'd been getting ready for work, distracted. "What? The patent? I'm not listed as an inventor. The company developed it for commercial use. That's just how these things work. I developed it before I even met your family. And without our resources, it would still be sitting in a university library. Essie, this is business. Don't take it personally. But it was personal. It was her work, her name, her years of research she'd pushed back. For weeks, she'd tried to talk to him, to his father, to the company's legal team. Everyone had the same answer. This is standard. This is how it works. You're family now. What's good for the company is good for you. Madame Cho had pulled her aside after one family dinner. You need to stop making trouble, she'd said quietly. Junwoo is trying to prove himself. You're making him look bad in front of his father. I'm asking for my name on my own work. The work you did using our lab, our materials, our time. You've been given a good life. Don't be ungrateful, that word. Ungrateful, like Essie should thank them for erasing her. She'd stopped pushing after that. Stopped because every conversation went nowhere, and every time she brought it up, Junwoo looked at her like she was being difficult. The erasure continued in smaller ways. Family dinners where Madame Cho served everyone except Essie, forcing her to serve herself last. Conversations in rapid Korean that excluded her on purpose. Junwoo's cousin Yuna, beautiful and polite, seated next to Junwoo at every gathering while Essie sat 3 seats down. Essie started spending more time alone. In their apartment, in coffee shops, anywhere that wasn't the Park family home. Then came the night that broke everything. She'd been going through files on the shared computer, looking for a reference document, and found an email thread between Junwoo and the company's patent attorney. International filings for her formula, Europe, United States, China, all under Park Fiber Company's name, no mention of her. She'd printed every email, every document, and waited for Junwoo to come home. He'd walked in past midnight, tired, smelling like soju. We need to talk, Essie had said. Can it wait? I have an early meeting. No. She'd spread the emails on the table, watched him look at them, watched his face close off. You went through my files. You filed international patents without telling me. It's company property, Essie. I don't need to tell you every business decision. It's my formula. No, he'd said, and his voice had gone cold. It's the company's formula. You contributed research, and you've been compensated with a comfortable life and a position in this family. Without my family's money and resources, that formula would still be worthless notes in a notebook nobody would ever read. The words had hit like a slap. Essie had stared at him, this man she'd married, and realized she didn't recognize him anymore. Or maybe she'd never known him at all. Get out, she'd said quietly. What? Get out. Sleep somewhere else tonight. He'd left. Came back 2 days later, acting like nothing had happened. But everything had happened. That night, Essie stopped being a wife trying to fix her marriage. She became someone with a plan. Asterisk batch 1 ends here. Asterisk continue to batch 2,000 words. The first person Essie called was Kofi Mensah, her uncle in Paris. He was a patent attorney who specialized in international intellectual property law, and he answered on the 3rd ring. Essie? It's 2 in the morning here. I need help, uncle. His voice sharpened immediately. What happened? She told him everything. The patents, the erasure, Junwoo's words. When she finished, there was a long silence. Do you have proof you developed this formula before the marriage? Yes. My thesis, my lab notebooks from Lyon, emails with professors, everything, and you signed documents giving the company rights, under false pretenses. I was told my name would be included. Another pause, then, this is fixable. But you need to move carefully. Do exactly what I tell you. For the next 18 months, Essie lived 2 lives. In one life, she was Park Junwoo's wife. She attended family dinners, smiled politely at Madame Cho's barbed comments, and played the role of the quiet foreign daughter-in-law who'd learned her place. In her other life, she was building a case that would destroy them. Uncle Kofi connected her with attorneys in 3 countries. They filed patents under her maiden name, Mensah, in the European Union first, then the United States, then 17 African nations under the OAPI Agreement. The key, Uncle Kofi explained during one of their encrypted video calls, is proving prior art. You developed this before they did. Your thesis predates their filing by 2 years. That makes their patents vulnerable. What if they fight it? Let them fight. You have documentation they can't contest. University records, dated notebooks, professor testimonials. They have corporate paperwork with your signature on it, but we can prove duress and misrepresentation. Essie spent her days in the apartment, alone, gathering evidence. She photographed every page of her original notebooks. She compiled emails. She recorded dates, meetings, conversations. At night, Junwoo came home and asked what she'd done all day. Cleaning, she'd say, studying Korean. He never asked to see her progress. 6 months into her planning, Essie got an email from a company called Minjun Textiles. The CEO had seen her patent filings in the EU database and wanted to talk. They met in a cafe in Itaewon, neutral territory. The CEO was a woman in her 60s named Hong Jae-shin, and she got straight to the point. Park Fiber Company has been marketing your dye technology as theirs. I know it's yours because I read patents for breakfast, and I recognize theft when I see it. Essie said nothing. I want to license your formula, Hong Jae-shin continued, properly. With your name on the contract and fair compensation. Are you interested? I'm still married to Park Junwoo, I know. That's why I'm asking if you're interested, not if you're available. When you're ready, call me. She'd slid a business card across the table and left. Essie kept the card. 3 months later, a luxury hotel chain reached out. Shin Hospitality, owned by the family of Yuna, the cousin who'd been seated next to Junwoo at every family dinner. The email was professional, inquiring about sustainable textile solutions for their hotel renovation project. Essie replied with her rates. Triple what she thought they'd pay. They agreed immediately. The money started coming in, small amounts at first, consultancy fees, licensing deposits. Essie opened a bank account Junwoo didn't know about, routing everything through her maiden name. 10 million won became 50 million, 50 became 200 million. She was careful. Every transaction was documented, every contract reviewed by Uncle Kofi's network. Nothing could be contested later. Meanwhile, at family dinners, Madame Cho continued to serve everyone except Essie. Junwoo's brother continued to ignore her. Junwoo himself grew more distant, coming home later, speaking to her less. One night he didn't come home at all. Essie didn't ask where he'd been. She didn't care anymore. By month 15, her account had grown to 3 billion won. The European clients were happy, the contracts were solid, and her patents were filed in 23 countries. She met with Attorney Baek for the first time in a small office in Seocheodong. Attorney Baek had looked over every document, every filing, every piece of evidence. Then she'd looked up at Essie and smiled. This is the most thoroughly prepared case I've seen in 30 years. When do you want to move? Not yet, Essie had said. I need one more thing. What? I need him to file for divorce first. Attorney Baek had raised her eyebrows. Why? Because when he does, he'll think he's winning. His family will think they're getting rid of me quietly. They'll be comfortable, confident. That's when people make mistakes. You're sure he'll file? I'm sure. She was right. 2 months later, Junwoo came home with papers. Essie, we need to talk. She'd been sitting on the couch, reading. She set her book down and waited. He couldn't look at her directly. This isn't working. You know it isn't. We've been living separate lives for over a year, yes. I think it's better if we end this cleanly. No drama, no fighting. Just a simple divorce, okay? He'd blinked. Okay? Yes, if that's what you want. Relief had washed over his face. I'll make sure you're taken care of. My lawyer will handle everything fairly. Fairly. Like 3 million won for 4 years of marriage, and stolen intellectual property was fair. Essie had signed the papers he'd brought home that night. The ones that said she was agreeing to the divorce. Then she'd called Attorney Baek. He filed. We can move. 3 days later, Attorney Baek filed Essie's response. Not just an agreement to divorce, but a counterclaim for intellectual property theft, breach of contract, and 12 billion won in damages Junwoo didn't know until they were in court. Now sitting in her apartment after the hearing, Essie let herself feel the weight of what she'd done. Her phone was still off. Outside, the sun was setting, turning the sky orange and pink. She'd won the first round, but the real fight was just beginning. The next morning, Essie woke up to someone knocking on her door. She checked the peephole. Attorney Baek. You said not to answer calls from unknown numbers, Essie said as she opened the door. You didn't say anything about visitors. I came to warn you. Park Fiber Company's legal team has been calling my office since 6 a.m. They want to negotiate. Already, they're panicking. The international patent filings blindsided them. If your claims hold up, and they will, their entire product line is built on stolen technology. Every contract they've signed, every client they've sold to, it all becomes legally questionable. Essie put on water for tea. What are they offering? They haven't said yet. But they'll start low and work up. The question is, what do you want? Essie poured 2 cups. I want my name on every patent. I want public acknowledgement that I developed the formula. I want them to pay for what they took, and I want it in writing permanently so they can never erase me again. Attorney Baek smiled. Good. Don't settle for anything less. They drank tea and went over strategy for 2 hours. When Attorney Baek left, Essie finally turned her phone back on. 43 missed calls. 31 from Junwoo, 8 from numbers she didn't recognize, 4 from Madame Cho. There were text messages too. Junwoo, we need to talk. Junwoo, this is insane. Call me, Junwoo. What are you doing, Junwoo? Essie, please. She deleted them all. 1 week after the hearing, Essie sent a legal notice to every client Park Fiber Company had contracts with. The notice was simple and professionally worded. It informed them that there was an ongoing intellectual property dispute regarding the dye technology used in Park Fiber Company's products. It stated that Dr. Essie Mensah held prior patents in multiple jurisdictions. It suggested they might want to consult their own legal teams regarding potential liability. 2 of the European clients suspended their orders immediately. Junwoo called 60 times that day. Essie was having coffee in a shop in Samcheongdong when he finally found her. She'd known he would eventually. Seoul was big, but not big enough to hide forever. He slid into the seat across from her, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "You're destroying the company," he said. "No, I'm recovering what the company stole from me. Essie, this is crazy. We can fix this. Just drop the claim and we'll renegotiate. We'll put your name on everything, give you proper credit. You had 4 years to do that. I made mistakes. I know that now. But this," he gestured helplessly, "this is vindictive." She set down her coffee cup very carefully. Vindictive would be going to every industry publication and telling them exactly how your family treats the people who make them successful. Vindictive would be making sure everyone knows that the only reason Park Fiber Company survived was because you married someone, stole her work, and tried to throw her away when you were done. This isn't vindictive, Junwoo. This is just business. His face went red. "You can't do this. I already did. My mother wants to meet with you. I'm sure she does. Will you? Please. Just hear her out." Essie thought about it, pictured Madam Cho sitting in that courtroom watching her son laugh at his wife. "Fine, tomorrow, 2 p.m. My apartment. She'll want to meet somewhere neutral. My apartment or nowhere." He left without finishing the conversation. The next day, Madam Cho arrived exactly on time, which Essie had known she would. Lateness would suggest she was the one in need. Essie had cleaned the apartment and made tea, not because she wanted to be hospitable, but because she wanted Madam Cho to see how calm she was. Madam Cho sat on the couch, back straight, hands folded. She looked around the small apartment with an expression that said everything about what she thought of it. "You've been busy," Madam Cho said. "Yes. My lawyers tell me your patents are legitimate. They are. This could have been handled privately. Family business should stay in the family." Essie poured tea. "I stopped being family the moment you decided I was disposable. I never said that. You didn't have to. You said it every time you served everyone at dinner except me. Every time you spoke Korean too fast on purpose so I couldn't follow. Every time you seated Yuna next to your son like I didn't exist." Madam Cho's jaw tightened. "I was protecting my family. From what? From me? I wasn't a threat. I was someone who loved your son and wanted to build something good. You turned me into an enemy, and now you're trying to destroy us. No. I'm trying to get back what's mine. There's a difference." Madam Cho reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. She set it on the table between them. 2 billion won. Drop the claim, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and this all goes away. Essie didn't touch the envelope. "No. 4 billion then. That's more than you're claiming you're worth. It's not about the money. Everything is about money. Not this." Essie leaned forward. "You sat in that courtroom and laughed at me. You thought I was nothing, that I'd walk away with whatever scraps you threw at me. You were wrong, and no amount of money is going to make me forget that." Madam Cho's hands were shaking slightly. "With rage, not fear. What do you want then?" "I want every patent refiled with my name listed first. I want a public statement from Park Fiber Company acknowledging that I developed the technology. I want fair compensation for 4 years of stolen revenue. And I want it in writing, legal and binding, so your family can never do this to anyone else. That would destroy the company's credibility. Your company's credibility was built on my work without my name. You made that choice. This is just the consequence." Madam Cho stood up, leaving the envelope on the table. "You'll regret this, maybe. But I'll regret it with my name on my own work." After she left, Essie sat alone in the quiet apartment. Her hands were shaking now too, but not from anger, from relief. She'd said everything she'd needed to say, and she'd said it clearly. The envelope sat on the table, unopened. 4 billion won. She threw it away. If you're wondering how far Essie's going to take this, and whether the Park family ever recovers, stick around because the next part is going to blow your mind. 2 weeks later, the industry rumor mill started churning. Essie had signed a licensing agreement with Minjin Textiles. Not an employment contract, a licensing deal, which meant she maintained all rights to her technology while getting paid for its use. Hong Jae-shin, Minjin's CEO, had called Essie personally. "I heard about your courtroom performance. Very impressive. My offer still stands, and I'm adding 20% to the original terms." The contract was good, better than good. It gave Essie steady revenue, industry credibility, and a partnership with one of Park Fiber Company's biggest competitors. She signed it the same day. News spread fast in the textile industry. By the end of the week, 3 of Park Fiber Company's remaining clients had renegotiated their contracts with significantly reduced orders. Junwoo called again. This time, Essie answered. "You signed with Minjin." His voice was flat. "Yes. You're handing our competitor everything. I'm licensing my own technology to a company that's willing to put my name on it. If that hurts Park Fiber Company, maybe you should ask yourself why. My father is furious. My brother wants to sue you for corporate sabotage. Let him try. I have documentation proving everything I developed predates my involvement with your family. Any lawsuit they file will just give me more opportunities to make that public." Silence on the other end. Essie, please, we can still fix this. No, we can't. You keep saying that like there's a version of this where I forgive you and make everything go away. There isn't. I'm done being erased. She hung up. That night, she got an email from a journalist named Kang Mirei who wrote for a major business publication. The subject line read, "Request for interview, Dr. Mensah." Essie stared at the email for a long time. Attorney Bake had warned her this might happen. Once the legal filings become public record, journalists will start asking questions. You need to decide if you want to control your own narrative or let others tell your story. Essie replied to the email. They met in a quiet restaurant in Yongsan. Kang Mirei was younger than Essie expected, maybe early 30s, with sharp eyes and a voice recorder she set on the table between them. "Thank you for meeting me," Kang Mirei said. "I've been following the Park Fiber Company case. The legal filings are public, but I wanted to hear your side directly. What do you want to know? Everything. How you developed the technology, what happened with Park Fiber Company, why you're fighting this now." Essie told her story. Not the emotional parts, not the personal humiliation, just the facts. She developed a formula, brought it to a company, married into the family, watched her name get erased, and spent 18 months building a legal case to get it back. Kang Mirei took notes, asked clarifying questions, and didn't try to make Essie cry for sympathy. At the end, she asked, "What do you want people to know?" Essie thought about it. "I want them to know that intellectual property theft doesn't just happen in dramatic ways. It happens quietly, in boardrooms and family dinners and contracts you sign because you trust someone. And I want other people, especially women, especially immigrants, to know that you can fight back. It's hard and it's slow, but you can win." The article ran 2 weeks later. The headline was simple: the formula that built a company and the woman whose name was erased from it. It was fair, factual, and devastating. Kang Mirei had included quotes from industry experts about the importance of proper attribution. She'd outlined the timeline of events, the patent filings, the divorce case. She'd let the facts speak for themselves. The article got picked up internationally. Francophone African publications ran it. European trade journals translated it. Someone posted it on a popular forum for women in STEM, and it went viral. Park Fiber Company's stock dropped 8% in 2 days. Essie's phone started ringing with interview requests, speaking invitations, partnership inquiries. She ignored most of them and focused on the work, but one email caught her attention. It was from Shin Hospitality, from Yuna. The subject line, "I owe you an apology." Essie opened it. "Dr. Mensah, I read the article. I didn't know the full story of what happened with the patents. I should have asked more questions. I'm sorry for my part in making you feel unwelcome in the family. If you're open to it, I'd like to meet and discuss a business proposal separate from family politics." Yuna. Essie stared at the email for a long time. Yuna had been complicit, whether she'd meant to be or not. She'd been the perfect daughter-in-law stand-in, the one Madame Cho wished Junwoo had married instead. But she was also reaching out now, acknowledging fault, treating Essie like a professional instead of a scorned wife. Essie replied, "Coffee, Thursday, 3 p.m. Location of my choice." They met at a cafe in Cheongdam-dong, expensive and public. Yuna arrived in a business suit. No family members, no pretense. She sat down and got straight to it. "I'm expanding Shin Hospitality's sustainability initiatives. We're renovating 15 hotels over the next 3 years, and we need a textile supplier who can meet environmental standards. I want to work with you. Not Park Fiber Company? No, I read your patents. I know whose work is whose now. And honestly, after seeing how they treated you, I don't want to do business with them." Essie studied her. "Your family and the Park family are close. This will cause problems. Probably. But it's my company, and I make the decisions. Are you interested?" "What are the terms?" They negotiated for an hour. Yuna's offer was generous, a 3-year contract with options to extend, full attribution, and licensing fees that reflected the actual value of Essie's work. At the end, Essie said, "You know Madame Cho is going to see this as a betrayal." "I know." Yuna smiled thinly. "She'll get over it or she won't. Either way, this is good business." They shook hands. When Madame Cho found out, and she did within 48 hours, she called Essie directly. "You turned Yuna against us." "No. Yuna made a business decision. I just gave her the opportunity. This is petty revenge. This is a 3-year contract with a reputable hotel chain. If it feels like revenge, maybe that says more about you than it does about me." Madame Cho hung up. Essie sat back and allowed herself a small smile. The irony was almost perfect. Yuna, the woman who was supposed to replace her, had become her client instead. But the real victory came 3 weeks later. Park Fiber Company's lawyers requested a settlement meeting. Not an offer delivered through intermediaries. A formal meeting, both legal teams, mediation on the table. Attorney Bake called with the news. "They're ready to negotiate seriously. This is it, Essie. Whatever you want, now's the time to ask for it." "I already know what I want." "Tell me." Essie laid it out. Every patent refiled with her name listed as primary inventor. A public statement from Park Fiber Company acknowledging her as the creator of the technology. Financial settlement covering 4 years of lost revenue and licensing fees. And one more thing. I want Park Fiber Company to license the technology for me. I keep the patents. They pay me quarterly to use what I created. Attorney Bake was quiet for a moment, then she laughed. You want them to become your client? Yes, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Can we get it with the evidence we have? Yes. They need this to go away more than they need their pride. The settlement meeting was scheduled for the following week. Essie barely slept the night before. Not from nerves, but from anticipation. She'd spent 2 years being erased, 18 months planning her return, and 4 months fighting in court. Now she was going to win. The meeting was in a conference room in a neutral office building, the kind of space that smelled like expensive coffee and desperation. Jun Woo was there with his lawyers. Madam Cho sat beside him, stone-faced. Jun Ho, the older brother, sat at the head of the table, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Essie sat across from them with Attorney Bake. The mediator went through preliminary statements, but Essie barely heard them. She was watching Jun Woo, watching the moment he realized she wasn't backing down. Attorney Bake presented their terms. The patents, the public statement, the financial settlement, the licensing agreement. Jun Ho spoke first. The licensing arrangement is unacceptable. We're not paying you to use technology we developed in our labs. You didn't develop it, Essie said calmly. I did. Before I met your family, I have documentation proving it. If you want to keep using it, you pay for it. If you don't, I pull the patents and you lose your entire product line. That would destroy the company. Then I suggest you accept the terms. Madam Cho leaned forward. You want us humiliated. This isn't about justice, it's about hurting us. No, Essie said. If I wanted to hurt you, I'd pull the patents and watch you collapse. This way, you get to stay in business. You just have to pay fairly for the privilege. The mediation lasted 4 hours. Park Fiber Company's lawyers tried every angle, every compromise, every reduction. Essie didn't budge. Finally, Jun Ho looked at his lawyers. What happens if we don't settle? This goes to court, one of them said. Discovery gets ugly. Everything becomes public record. The international filings make our position weak. We'll lose, and it'll cost more in legal fees than the settlement. Jun Ho closed his eyes. Fine. Draw up the agreement. Essie felt something release in her chest. Not relief, victory. The papers were drafted over the next 2 weeks, every term Essie had asked for, in writing, legally binding. On the day she signed, Attorney Bake opened a bottle of wine in her office. To the most satisfying case of my career, she said, raising her glass. Essie clinked glasses with her, but didn't drink yet. What's wrong? Attorney Bake asked. Nothing. I just need a minute to let it be real. She'd won. Completely. Her name was going back on every patent. Park Fiber Company would issue a public statement. She'd receive 4 billion won in back payment. And every quarter, the family that tried to erase her would write her a check for the right to use what she'd created. It's real, Attorney Bake said gently. You did it. Essie drank. Asterisk batch 2 ends here. Asterisk continue to batch 3, 5,000 words. The public statement from Park Fiber Company went out 3 days after the settlement was signed. It was brief, professionally worded, and exactly what Essie had demanded. Park Fiber Company acknowledges that Dr. Essie Akuavi-Mensah is the original creator and patent holder of the BioBates textile dye technology currently used in our production processes. We recognize her significant contributions to sustainable textile innovation and have entered into a licensing agreement to continue utilizing her proprietary formulas. We are committed to proper attribution and fair compensation for all intellectual property. It ran in trade publications on the company website and in a press release that got picked up by business news outlets. Essie rested sitting in her apartment with her laptop open. She read it 3 times to make sure every word was really there. Then she called her mother. Mama, it's done. Adjoa's voice came through clear and steady. You won? Yes. Good. When are you coming home? Next week. I need to see you. I'll make your room ready. Essie hadn't been back to Lemay in 2 years. She'd sent money, called every week, but she hadn't gone home. There'd been too much work to do, too much fighting left. Now finally she could stop. The flight from Seoul to Lomé took 20 hours with layovers. Essie slept through most of it, the kind of deep sleep she hadn't managed in months. When she landed, the heat hit her immediately, thick and familiar. She'd forgotten how different the air felt here, heavy with humidity and red dust. Her mother was waiting outside arrivals in a blue wrapper and headscarf, looking exactly the same as she had 2 years ago. Essie dropped her bag and hugged her. Adjoa patted her back. You're too thin. I'm fine, Mama. We'll fix that. Come on. The drive to her mother's compound took 40 minutes through crowded streets and markets bursting with color. Essie watched it all through the car window, feeling something tight in her chest start to loosen. This was home, not the apartment in Seoul, not the Park family house. Here. That evening they sat on the veranda while the sun set, painting the sky orange and purple. Adjoa had made red with plantains, and Essie ate 2 full plates. "Tell me everything," Adjoa said. So Essie did. The courtroom, the settlement, the licensing deal, all of it. Adjoa listened without interrupting, the way she always did. When Essie finished, her mother was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "You went to a foreign country. You built something. They tried to take it. You took it back, and you still have your hands, your mind, your name." That's victory. Essie felt her throat tighten. "I was so angry, Mama, for so long. Anger is useful when it moves you forward. Sounds like yours did. I wanted them to hurt the way they hurt me." "Did they?" Essie thought about Junwoo's face in the mediation room, Madame Cho's shaking hands. "The quarterly payments they'd have to send for years. Yes, then let it go now. You don't need to carry it anymore." Something broke open in Essie's chest. She started crying, not from sadness but from relief, deep and overwhelming. Adjoa pulled her close and let her cry. "You did good, my girl. You did real good." Essie stayed in Lomé for 2 weeks. She visited old friends, walked through the markets, sat in her mother's kitchen, and remembered what it felt like to be somewhere she didn't have to translate herself. But she also started making plans. On her last day, she met with the director of the University of Lomé's chemistry department. His name was Dr. Akakpo, and he'd been one of her professors before she left for France. They sat in his office, which was small and crowded with books. "I read about your case," he said. "Very impressive. You're making us proud. Thank you. I wanted to talk to you about something. I'm starting a company, headquarters in Seoul, but I want a research facility here, in Lomé, focused on sustainable textile innovation, employing local chemists, training students." Dr. Akakpo's eyebrows went up. "You're serious?" "Completely. I have the funding, I have the contacts. I need the expertise, and I know there's talent here that never gets the opportunity to develop. I want to change that. What would you need from the university?" "Partnership. Lab space initially, until I can build a dedicated facility. Access to graduate students who want real-world research experience, and your help identifying the best candidates." Dr. Akakpo smiled. "When do we start?" 3 months. I need to set up the Seoul's office first, but then we move." They shook hands. When Essie flew back to Seoul, she wasn't the same person who'd left. The anger had burned out, leaving something clearer behind. She had work to do. Mensa Textile Technologies officially launched 4 months after the settlement. The office was in Gangnam, a small space on the 8th floor of a modern building. It had 3 employees to start, Essie, a business manager, and a lab technician. Small, but it was hers. The first client was Minjin Textiles, the licensing deal already in place. The second was Shin Hospitality, Yuna's contract providing steady revenue. The third was a French sustainable fashion brand that had reached out after reading about Essie in European trade press. By month 6, she had 12 clients across 5 countries. By month 12, she'd hired 8 more employees and opened the research facility in Lomé. The Lomé facility was everything Essie had imagined. A converted warehouse near the university, retrofitted with modern lab equipment and workspace for 20 researchers, Dr. Akakpo helped her recruit the first team, young chemists hungry for opportunities that didn't require leaving the country. Essie split her time between Seoul and Lomé, managing both offices, developing new formulas, building something that was entirely hers. Forbes Africa ran a profile on her. The chemist who fought back and built an empire. She was invited to speak at a textile innovation summit in Milan, then another in Shanghai, then a Women in STEM conference in Nairobi. Her calendar filled up with opportunities she'd never imagined 2 years ago when she was sitting in a courtroom in a stained dress. Every quarter, a payment arrived from Park Fiber Company. Licensing fees exactly as stipulated in the settlement. Essie deposited the checks and kept building. 1 year after the settlement, she received an invitation to speak at Seoul National University's engineering school. The topic was intellectual property protection for researchers. She almost declined. Public speaking still made her nervous, and the university was prestigious in a way that felt intimidating. But Attorney Bake convinced her, "You have a story people need to hear. Especially young researchers who don't know how to protect their work. Go," so she went. The lecture hall was bigger than she expected, filled with students and faculty. Essie stood at the podium and told her story the same way she'd told the journalist, just the facts, clean and clear. When she finished, the applause was long and genuine. During the question period, a young woman in the 3rd row raised her hand. "How did you know you'd win? Weren't you scared they'd destroy you?" Essie thought about it. "I was terrified. Every single day, but I was more afraid of living the rest of my life knowing I'd let them erase me. Fear doesn't go away. You just decide what you're more afraid of." Another student asked, "Do you regret marrying him?" "I regret trusting people who didn't deserve it. But I don't regret the work I did or what I learned from fighting back. Everything that happened made me build something better than what I lost." After the lecture, students lined up to talk to her. Young women mostly, asking about patents and contracts and how to negotiate fair terms. Essie stayed for 2 hours, answering every question, handing out business cards, making connections. When she finally left, it was dark outside. She walked to the subway station feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Not for herself, but for the people coming after her who might have an easier path because she'd fought. That same week, Madame Cho signed the 4th quarterly payment. She sat in her office at Park Fiber Company, the office that used to belong to her husband before he'd passed and left her in charge of protecting the family legacy. The check sat on her desk. Made out to Dr. Essie Mensah, Mensah Textile Technologies, 400 million won, the same amount every quarter. A constant reminder of the mistake her son had made, the woman they'd underestimated, the empire they could have controlled if they'd just treated her fairly. Madame Cho signed the check with a hand that didn't shake anymore. She'd gotten used to it. She put it in the envelope, sealed it, and handed it to her assistant to mail. Then she sat alone in her office and wondered, not for the first time, how different things would have been if she'd just served S dinner that first night. If she'd welcomed her instead of trying to erase her. Too late now. The company was smaller than it used to be. Junho ran things now, efficient but uninspired. Junwoo had left the business entirely, working for a mid-sized firm in Busan, too ashamed to stay in Seoul. The family name was intact but diminished. Everyone in the industry knew what had happened. They were the company that stole from their daughter-in-law and lost everything because of it. Madame Cho looked out her window at the Seoul skyline and felt very, very tired. Across the city, in a research facility in Lomé, Ajoa walked through rows of lab benches where young chemists worked on sustainable dye formulas. Her daughter had built this. Built it from nothing, from anger and brilliance and refusal to disappear. Ajoa stopped to talk to one of the researchers, a girl barely 22, who was testing a new plant-based mordant. "How's it going?" Ajoa asked in French. The girl looked up, excited. "Good. Dr. Mensah's process works even better than I thought. I'm documenting everything so we can publish. Make sure your name is on that publication." "Oh, Dr. Mensah already said it would be. She's very serious about attribution." Ajoa smiled. "Yes, she is." She walked back outside where the sun was setting over Lomé, turning everything gold and warm. Her daughter had gone into the world and come back stronger, not broken, not defeated. Victorious. On a cold afternoon in Seoul, 18 months after the settlement, Junwoo was walking through Gangnam on his way to meet a client. He'd been in Busan for 8 months, working for a textile company that was respectable but unremarkable. The job was fine, his apartment was fine, everything was fine, except it wasn't. He turned a corner and stopped. There was a billboard on the side of a building 3 stories tall, advertising a sustainable textile initiative. Essie's face was on it. She looked exactly like she had the first time he'd met her, steady and certain, with eyes that didn't ask for permission. The text read, "Innovation starts with respect, Doctor." Essie Mensah, founder and CEO, Mensah Textile Technologies. Junwoo stood on the sidewalk staring up at it. People walked past him, busy with their own lives, not noticing the man who'd stopped in the middle of the street. He thought about the day he'd met her, how brilliant she'd been, how excited he'd felt about her formula and what it could do for his company. He thought about the night he'd told her the formula was worthless without his family's resources. The look on her face when she'd realized he didn't see her as a partner anymore. He thought about the courtroom, the moment her lawyer had revealed her net worth, the way his whole world had tilted. He'd lost her. Lost the company's best chance at real innovation. Lost his position, his credibility, his family's respect. And she'd built an empire. He stood there for 5 more minutes looking up at her face on that billboard, and then he walked away. She wouldn't know he'd been there. She wouldn't care if she did. He was a footnote in her story now, not the other way around. 2 years after the settlement, Essie stood backstage at an international textile summit in Shanghai. The venue was massive, 2,000 people in the audience, industry leaders from 40 countries. She was the keynote speaker. Her hands were shaking slightly. She'd done dozens of talks by now. But this was the biggest stage yet. A coordinator wearing a headset gave her a 5-minute warning. Essie smoothed down her suit jacket. Navy blue, tailored perfectly, expensive in a way that her old stained dress had never been. She thought about that dress for a moment. Thought about the woman who'd worn it into a courtroom, scared but determined. That woman would be proud of who she'd become. The coordinator signaled, "You're on." Essie walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, the applause was loud, and for just a second she felt the weight of how far she'd come. Then she reached the podium, looked out at 2,000 faces, and began. "Good afternoon, my name is Dr. Essie Akwavi Mensah, and I want to talk to you about the importance of protecting your intellectual property, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're an immigrant. especially if someone tells you that your work is only valuable because of their resources. The audience leaned in. She told them about innovation, about sustainability, about the textile industry's responsibility to credit the people who make breakthroughs possible. And then she announced something she'd been planning for months. Today, I'm launching the Mensa Innovation Scholarship, a fully funded program for African women pursuing degrees in STEM fields. We'll cover tuition, living expenses, and research costs for 20 students per year, with priority given to those studying sustainable technology and chemical engineering. The applause was immediate and overwhelming. Essie smiled. I came to Korea with a formula and a dream. I almost lost both, but I learned that your name on your work isn't vanity, it's survival, it's legacy, and it's something worth fighting for. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. Backstage afterward, she checked her phone. Messages from clients, congratulations from colleagues, an email from her mother that just said, "Saw the live stream, proud of you." And one message from Attorney Bake, "You just changed the game." Well done. Essie sat down in a quiet corner and let herself feel it, all of it. The victory, the vindication, the knowledge that she'd taken everything they'd tried to steal and turned it into something they could never touch. She pulled out a business card from her wallet, one she'd had printed when the company first launched. Dr. Essie Akuavi Mensah, founder and CEO Mensa Textile Technologies. Her name, visible, undeniable, permanent. She'd come to Korea with her formula and her name. They'd tried to take both. She'd left with an empire built on her own terms and a legacy that would outlast every person who tried to erase her. That evening, she had dinner with 3 other women entrepreneurs, all of them building companies in male-dominated industries. They talked about challenges, strategies, and victories. One of them asked Essie, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd just accepted the settlement they offered at the beginning? $3 million won and a quiet exit?" Essie sipped her wine. "I think about it sometimes. My life would have been easier." "Do you regret fighting?" "No, because easy doesn't mean better. I would have spent the rest of my life knowing I let them win. This way I know exactly what I'm capable of, and so does everyone else." Another woman raised her glass. To fighting back, they all clinked glasses. To fighting back. Later that night, alone in her hotel room, Essie opened her laptop and started drafting plans for the next phase of Mensa Textile Technologies, expansion into South America. New formulas for waterproof sustainable fabrics, a second research facility, this one in Accra. She worked until 2 in the morning, then closed her laptop and stood at the window, looking out at Shanghai's glittering skyline. Somewhere in Seoul, Park Fiber Company was preparing to send her next quarterly payment. Somewhere in Busan, Junwoo was probably asleep, living a life that was smaller than the one he'd imagined. Somewhere in Lomé, her mother was waking up to sunrise over the compound, getting ready for another day. And here in Shanghai, Essie stood in a hotel room overlooking a city that had just heard her story and believed it. She'd been erased once. She'd made sure it would never happen again. 3 months later, Essie was back in Seoul, meeting with a potential investor who wanted to help fund the Ghana facility. She walked through Gangnam on her way to the meeting, past the billboard with her face on it. It had been up for 6 months now, and she still got a small thrill every time she saw it. Her phone rang. Attorney Beck. "Essie, I just got a call from Park Fiber Company's legal team." Essie's stomach tightened. "What do they want?" "They want to renegotiate the licensing terms. They're asking for a reduction in quarterly payments." "No. I told them you'd say that. They're claiming financial hardship. Not my problem. The contract is binding for 5 years. They signed it. I know, I just wanted to tell you they tried. Don't worry, I already sent the rejection." After they hung up, Essie allowed herself a small smile. They were still trying to get out of paying her what she was worth. They would fail, just like they'd failed before. Her meeting went well. The investor committed to funding 40% of the Ghana facility. By the time Essie left, she had commitments totaling enough to break ground within 6 months. Walking back through the city, she passed a bookstore and saw her face again, this time on the cover of a business magazine. The headline read, "The New Face of Sustainable Innovation." She bought a copy and mailed it to her mother. That night, she had dinner with Yuna. They'd become something like friends over the past 2 years, bonded by business and mutual respect. "I heard Park Fiber tried to renegotiate," Yuna said over bulgogi. "They did. It didn't work. Madam Cho is apparently furious. She called my mother complaining about you." "What did your mother say?" Yuna grinned. "She said that maybe if they'd treated you better, they wouldn't be paying you forever." Then she hung up. Essie laughed, genuine and surprised. "You know," Yuna said more seriously, "I really am sorry for how I participated in making you feel invisible. I didn't understand what was happening, but I should have asked. You've apologized. And you've done business with me honestly. That's what matters now. Still, I want you to know I see it clearly now. What they did was wrong." Essie nodded. I appreciate that. They finished dinner and parted ways as colleagues, as business partners, as two women who'd found mutual respect after a complicated beginning. If this story inspired you, if you're rooting for Essie, if you believe in fighting for what's yours, hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because stories like this remind us that you don't have to accept being erased. You can fight back, and you can win. 5 years after the courtroom victory, Mensa Textile Technologies had offices in 3 countries, employed over 100 people, and held patents in 42 nations. The scholarship program had funded 68 women through graduate programs. Essie's formulas were used by companies on 5 continents. And every quarter, without fail, Park Fiber Company sent a payment. On the 5-year anniversary of the settlement, Essie received a letter. It was from Junwoo. She almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity won. The letter was short. Essie, I know I don't have the right to contact you. I know an apology won't change anything. But I need to say it anyway. I was wrong. About everything. I let my family erase you because it was easier than standing up for you. I told myself it was just business, but it wasn't. It was cowardice. You deserved better. You deserved a partner who saw your value and protected it. I'm sorry I wasn't that person. I'm sorry for all of it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I see now what I couldn't see then. You were always the brilliant one. I hope you're building everything you dreamed of. Junwoo. Essie read it twice, then folded it and put it in a drawer. She didn't respond. Some apologies come too late to matter. This was one of them. But she kept the letter anyway, not because she forgave him, but because it was proof. Proof that she'd been right. Proof that he knew it. Proof that the woman they'd tried to erase had become someone impossible to ignore. That was enough. Years continued to pass. Mensa Textile Technologies kept growing. Essie kept innovating, kept building, kept making sure every person who worked for her got credit for their contributions. She never married again, never wanted to. She built something better than a marriage. She built a legacy. And when she finally wrote her will, decades later, she left everything to the scholarship fund, ensuring that long after she was gone, young women would have the opportunities she'd had to fight for. Her name would live on in the work, in the patents, in the students who carried forward what she'd started. They'd tried to erase Essie Akuavi Mensa. Instead, they'd made her unforgettable.